My name is Carolyn Oberholzer. I am the outside land use attorney for the State Land Department. The State Land Department uses outside counsel in efforts such as this to help them navigate the specific rules and regulations of the local jurisdictions. They own 9.28 million acres in the state of Arizona, and so you can imagine that that's quite an effort to manage every acre. And this is a graphic depiction of where that acreage is. You can see the blue areas throughout the state. The pointer is eluding me. And these areas are largely the concentrations of state land. A bit of history, for those of you that were in the general plan process, you did learn this then. Most of the state land was established when the territory of Arizona was established. This state and many others are divided up into sections of land. A section of land is basically a square mile. It is 640 acres. Sections are labeled by number. And in the state, when the territory was created, section numbers 36 and 16 were all established for the benefit of the State Land Trust. Then, again, when the state was created, 2 additional sections were assigned. Those would be sections 2 and 32. Now, as those land assignments were made, some of the land was already homesteaded or not available, so there were exchanges. And as a result, there are other sections of land that are also in the state trust. The land that we are dealing with as a part of this process, one is section 32, that's that northern shaped piece. You'll notice the carve out, as was mentioned, that used to be state trust land, that's Tangerine Crossing now. So that section of land, 640 acres, is number 32. And then the other section of land is section 5. This property, as you can see on the map, is adjacent to the town of Oro Valley on this side. It's helpful for me to understand when we get to the question and answer section where people are coming from. So just by show of hands, if you live on the north side of Tangerine in this area or north of Moore, would you raise your hands? Okay, great, thank you. And if you live on the west side of Thornydale or in this northern part, would you please raise your hands? Okay, thank you. How about from Tangerine Crossing in Mariana? Okay. Okay, thank you. And along this side of Thornydale, south of Tangerine? Okay. And then I think we've made our way all the way around, almost, now to this area of Pima County, to the south. Yes, talk about that. And then in this section of Oro Valley. Okay, great, thank you. So what that tells me is all of the sides are here tonight, and hopefully the information that you get here, you can help to disseminate to your neighbors as well. So more about the State Land Trust. Something that's commonly mistaken about the land is that it is public land and that it is accessible to the public, and that is not correct. It is held in trust for its beneficiaries. The beneficiaries of the land are a variety of institutions, all education related. Every acre of state trust land has beneficiaries assigned to it. This particular state trust land is held for the benefit of the Common Schools Fund, which funds K-12 education. And the land, because it's held in trust, the State Land Department acts as a fiduciary and is responsible to the beneficiaries to maximize revenue generated from the trust land. Revenue is generated by 2 ways, through sales and through leases. And all of the land, all 9.28 million acres, are evaluated for grazing, agricultural uses, municipal, residential, commercial mining, open space purposes, any purpose that you can utilize land to generate revenue, it's evaluated for. Now, we're in an annexation discussion with the town of Oro Valley for a number of reasons. As was mentioned, this is a conversation that's been occurring with the department and the town for several decades, and most notably in the past decade. Your town has experienced growth. The state of Arizona has experienced growth. Tangerine Road is in a much different condition than it was just even a few months ago. And so this is becoming a major corridor and a major thoroughfare, and so it makes sense for the state trust to pay attention to this land as it is reaching its potential for revenue generation. Now, there's no current proposal for development on this parcel. There is no development application. How the process occurs for this to go to auction and then ultimately be sold at auction typically would involve an applicant making application to the department, and that would then kick off an analysis, and the discretion of the commissioner who is managing the trust would determine whether or not the land has reached its maximum potential in terms of revenue generation. And then it would potentially go out to auction after that. In the auction process, anyone can bid. It is not limited to any residential developer or commercial retail developer. It's anyone. And it can be you, it can be the town, it can be a variety of people, local to Arizona or not. But the key is that through this process, we are establishing a framework of land use regulations that would govern the land after auction and would be managed through the full completion and build out of the master plan community. And we'll be getting into that piece. As I mentioned, every acre has a beneficiary, and this is the breakdown of the various beneficiaries. You can see that the Common Schools Fund, as I mentioned, as the beneficiary of these particular acres, is the largest in the state. So today, as I also mentioned, there's 9.2 million acres of state trust land. Over the past decade, only 5,000 acres, give or take, have been sold. It is sold at a very slow pace. Auctions typically occur in chunks of 20, 40, 100 acres. Yes, there are some samples of larger auctions and smaller. But it's very, again, a detailed analysis of, is this property right for development and at its maximum potential? And typically that would not involve disposing of a large amount of acreage, because values of land change over time. And in the last year, about 552 acres were sold. And so that tracks with the 5,000 acres, it's about 10% of that over 10 years. Today, we're dealing with 885 acres. So we would expect a very long development time frame for a project of this size. And that is why we use the specific plan tool. It's a creature of statute. The statutory reference is up on the screen. And what that does is it establishes the land use regulations for the project. It establishes the policies and implements the policies of the general plan. And it's implemented through a development agreement, all of which runs with the land for the duration of the project. It's important to know that when a piece is auctioned off, ultimately, if that occurs, then that land buyer is still beholden to the plan. There are, in these plans, unit count maximums, and there are assignments of uses that you cannot change. And that would continue to be the case through the development of the project. The state trust would ultimately retain rights to approve any subsequent rezoning process if they are still, if the project is still not yet built out. So the idea of the specific plan is to implement the master plan community designation that does apply to this on the general plan, to ensure that the project is developed cohesively and with appropriate measures for drainage, I heard, and traffic and water and the provision of infrastructure and the timing of that infrastructure and parks and open space and the like.